if you want to ask a question, and click on the icon at the bottom of the WebEx window to raise your hand. When I give you the floor, we will unmute you, and you can ask your question once your microphone has been enabled. The first question is from Maria Psara from Greece, from EFSIN. Maria?
Hello, actually it's Maria Psara with Star TV Greece, but thank you for the floor and thank you for the briefing. I have two questions, if I may. First one, we see a relaxation of all measures in member states, plus some member states don't use the COVID pass anymore. What is your opinion on this? And do we see the end of the tunnel? And the second question, on the other hand, there is still a high death rate in some member states. How could you explain that? Because we see that in Greece, we see that in many member states. Why, although in some member states the death toll is falling, in other member states remains very high? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Unfortunately, the first question on, the COVID pass is not really within the remit of EMA, and therefore I would ask you to perhaps turn to both national authorities and the European Commission for this question. On the second one, regarding the high death rate, this is also not really our remit, but I can ask Dr. Ferguswini to perhaps give you a little bit an overview of how these vaccines work normally.
So clearly we've had a very extensive rollout across the EU of the primary vaccinations and also increasing use of boosters in recent months, particularly in the elderly and vulnerable people. But we know very much with the different variants that have come across, the Delta and now the Omicron, these waves of infection across the EU and different populations with different timing. And we also know that in different parts of the EU, the level of vaccination is variable and not always as high as we would hope. So differences in the progress of the disease and the impact of the disease arise because of these conditions, and also, as you referred earlier, the differences in approach in the populations. But these waves will progress, and we know that also the mortality follows the infection waves by a number of weeks, because that obviously occurs as the serious disease has progressed.
Thank you very much. I'm now taking a question from Giovanni Del Rey from Avvenire, an Italian paper.
Yes,
Giovanni, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I have a question concerning the booster shots, because Dr. Cavallera was mentioning exactly as one of the main avenues to fight this pandemics. I have a very specific question concerning the Janssen vaccine, because some are saying that Janssen vaccine with one booster shot is not equivalent to people who got Pfizer or Moderna and then a third shot. Is there any scientific basis for this kind of assessment? So is, according to EMA, Johnson & Johnson with just one extra shot completely boosted, or is there an indication that actually those who have been vaccinated with Johnson & Johnson should get also a third shot? Thank you very much. That's my question.
Thank you very much. So the question about the Janssen vaccine and the effectiveness of booster shots, I'm going to give this question to Dr. Cavalieri.
Yeah, indeed, we approved the Janssen vaccine as a single dose as primary series, and we approved the second dose as the booster shot, which can be given after 2 months from the first shot. And this is based on a number of studies, including a large randomized clinical trial that looked into efficacy and showed that indeed 2 doses of the Janssen vaccine produce quite high level of protection, both from symptomatic disease and severe disease. And therefore, for us, this is the current recommendation with respect to the schedule to be used for the Janssen vaccine. Of course, it's up to member states to look whether the level of protection achieved with this vaccine with 2 doses might be different than what achieved with other type of vaccines and following a different number of doses, and it's up to them to decide if they want to give some extra doses. But for us, at the moment, there is no evidence to suggest that this would be needed. However, as always, we look into any new emerging evidence that could support such type of use.
Thank you very much. The next question comes from Ludwig Berger from Reuters. Ludwig, please.
Many thanks. I'd like to know on Paxlovid, please. I understand it was tested on the non-vaccinated, yet your recommendation covers everyone, I understand. So is there a need to assess the benefit further on a vaccinated population? If I can ask on another subject of Omicron-specific vaccines. So what's your best guess when such a vaccine could be approved on the timing? And secondly, you've clearly made your preference clear for multivalent, polyvalent vaccines, but would you stop a monovalent vaccine right now or slow it down, even though that might be for now the fastest opportunity to have something on the market? Would you rather wait for polyvalent vaccines to then be followed up with? So I'm just really curious about your preferences on the timing there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ludwig. In the end, these were the 3 questions. And the first one on Paxlovid, I'm going to give to Dr. Cavalieri. And then I think on Omicron, Dr. Fergus can give you some indication. And the last one on multivalent versus monovalent variant vaccine will be given to Dr. Cavalieri as well. Dr. Cavalieri.
Yeah, so indeed it's true that for Paxlovid, the study was conducted in non-vaccinated people, even if there was a certain amount of patients that were seropositive. So our assumption is that there will still be benefit even in people that have been vaccinated and have breakthrough infection, but of course we cannot really quantify if this benefit will be really of the same size of what we've seen in the clinical trial. So it will be important to follow up post-approval to collect more evidence that indeed would show what is then the real impact of Paxlovid when used in people that have been vaccinated. And not forgetting also that the study of Paxlovid was conducted in a pre-Omicron era. So it would be also important to see what is the impact of the use of such antivirals when Omicron is spreading around. And that's why we are collaborating with clinicians across Europe and in other parts of the world to make sure that we collect the evidence that will inform us precisely on where we stand on this.
Thanks. Dr. Cavalieri, do you also want to already respond to the multivalent versus monovalent?
Yeah, so as said, we think that it would be good to explore different options. So we never say that an Omicron different options. So we never say that an Omicron monovalent vaccine will not be a good option. Simply, we cannot say right now in a definitive way, and we really would benefit from having different investigational vaccine to be put into clinical trials so that we get really a broad information around what is the immunogenicity of this different construct, and then at the end decide which one is the best one. In our view, that would be the most robust way forward, but at the same time, if an Omicron monovalent vaccine can be put into clinical trials rapidly, I think we can only support that, and we are looking forward to seeing those data as soon as possible, because indeed we don't know how the pandemic will unfold from now on and after this Omicron wave, so we have to be prepared for all possible scenarios.
Thank you very much. This probably already responded to the question on the timing, but I don't know, Fergus, do you want to add to this?
No, but clearly we need to see the studies, which I understand have started on the Omicron variant, and then evaluate the data. But I think it's important to emphasize that the decision to switch manufacturing or to switch vaccination strategies to an Omicron variant or another solution and the timing of that is not one of the regulator. We look at the data which supports the use of a particular vaccine, its efficacy and how that works, but there's a wider public health decision to be made, and that's beyond us in terms of actually deciding to switch the manufacturing and vaccination campaigns to another variant vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sweeney. I'm now giving the floor to Gerardo D'Amico from Italian Rai.
Thank you. I would like to know if you think that we are just passing the fourth pandemic wave, or as someone say, we are at the end of the pandemic due to less serious clinical effects of Omicron. And then I would like to know when the EMA evaluated the administration of vaccine
Sorry, you were muted now. We only heard the first question that was talking about the fourth pandemic wave or the end of the pandemic, and the second question was you started with administration of vaccine, but we didn't hear the rest.
Yes, okay, right.
So what is the second question?
The second question is when the EMA will evaluate the administration of the vaccine from the 6 months, how is doing FDA USA.
Okay, you mean the vaccine for children from 6 months to 4 years, I think it is. Okay, so let's give the first question on the end of the pandemic to Dr. Sweeney. Dr. Sweeney, please.
So I think EMA's role is to monitor the data on the safety and efficacy of vaccines and therapeutics and to authorize those and update those authorizations as we get the appropriate data. But the decisions on the epidemiology, on where we are with the public health emergency and a pandemic lie with other public health authorities at European and global level. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the question on the vaccine for younger children. Dr. Cavalieri, please.
Yeah, so we are in discussion with the company, and we will try to understand by when this data can be submitted to the EMA as well. As you know, the clinical study in this age group is still ongoing, so we will have to take into account also when the final data will be made available with respect to this trial. But we are closely following up on this topic.
Thank you very much. The next question comes from Helen Collis from Politico. Helen, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, all fine.
Great. You mentioned, Marco, an update on Valneva's vaccine. No decision before Easter. That's a slightly different date to what the company has told me. Can you explain to me why you think nothing will happen before Easter? And then secondly, could you also please update us on the assessments for the Sputnik V vaccine, the vaccines from Sinovac and Sanofi Pasteur, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first one, Valneva. Dr. Cavalieri, please.
Yeah, so indeed, you know, we are in discussion with the companies whether the data will be covering the entirety of the adult population or they will be restricted. That's why it looks like it will take a bit more time before we can really conclude the assessment here. Of course, if the data will come sooner and we will be in the position that there are no major problems with the clinical study results, we could even think about having a conclusion earlier than that. But to be realistic, it's difficult for us to see that we will be in the position to conclude before Easter time.
Thank you very much. Now on the other vaccines that are currently under rolling review, Dr. Sweeney, please, Sputnik and Sinovac.
So there we continue the process of looking at information and data provided by the companies, the developers. We have carried out a number of inspections, as you know already, and we need to bring all that information together, but still are awaiting resolution of a number of matters for that review to continue. You asked also about the Sanofi Pasteur. I'd give that back to Marco. He can perhaps give a more specific detail on that. But for the others, the process continues, but we need further data and information to be able to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marco, please.
No, indeed, also for Sanofi Pasteur, we are really in touch with the company to really understand by when the clinical trial results can be made available, as indeed that will be really needed before we can really understand what could be the timetable. But again, if things can move on rapidly with this vaccine, we will be very eager to do so, and it's much dependent on the availability of the clinical trial data at this point in time.
Thank you very much. Now we have a question from Victoria English from Mednu. Victoria, please.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to go back to Dr. Cavallari's opening presentation when he talked about the discussions with industry on the design of future vaccines, either mono or multivalent. Will you be using in your, is it envisioned that all of the different types of vaccines that have thus far been approved will be part of this discussion? In other words, not just the mRNA vaccines.
Thank you very much. Dr. Cavalieri, please, on the different vaccines.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Indeed, we are talking to all the manufacturers of EU-approved vaccine because we need to understand what are the plan, and we will be progressing with them as well to really understand by when updated vaccines can be made available. It might take a little bit longer, but we really hope that also there we can move quite fast and try to understand what could be the best option also for these vaccines too.
Thank you very much. I don't see any additional hands up. Obviously, we have responded to all your questions, at least for today. So thank you very much for your questions and for your interest in our work, and also a big thank you to my colleagues who participated today. Please note that the next regular press briefing will take place in 2 weeks' time on Thursday, 17 February. And if you have any further questions or feedback for us, please do not hesitate to follow up with the press office at press@ema.europa.eu. Many thanks for today and goodbye.